Good day, podcast community. Pete Kane here, Podcast Pete and certified high performance coach. We got a special podcast for you today. We're going to flip the script and I'm going to give the keys to my friend Joel Crumbley. And he's going to ask anything he feels like. He's going to have control over this half hour, 45, however long he wants to go. I want him to really ask anything. So, Joel, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate you. The keys are yours.
All right. Well, thank you, Pete. Welcome to the Pete Kane podcast show. I'm your host, Joel Crumbley. Today, we have a wonderful guest. He's a spectacular man. He's a friend and a church member with me. Pete Kane, welcome to your own show.
It's glad to be here.
So actually, this is something I wanted to ask first, just because I've known you for a little while and I don't actually know your career history.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask, can you give us, let's say someone's tuning in for the first time to your show. What would you say in like a little summary form, maybe a few minutes, give us a career summary. Where have you been? Where have you, what all have you experienced?
Okay, thanks. That's a great question. I'll try to keep it just a couple minutes, just for the sake. If somebody wants to go deeper, they can always. But I at 18, I flunk English in high school. I don't graduate. I'm picking up range balls, and I'm wondering, dang, I couldn't even get out of high school. And so I eventually went to summer school and got through, and I still got into Virginia Tech. I wouldn't have got into Virginia Tech today, but I did. I failed. I went through two semesters. Head between my teeth. I didn't know what I was doing. Couldn't. I didn't know I had dyslexia at that time. I knew I was ADD, but I didn't know what it meant. But I just had an active brain. So I come back. I get a job, and I'm just moving people. I just called a friend, got a job, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to go back again. I'm going to get an apartment with some friends. I'm going to get focused, and I'm going to do it this time." I go up. That lasts one semester. So I come home and I'm going, dang, this ain't working. All my friends are going to college. Trade school wasn't even, I don't even think they could spell that at that time, because they pushed everybody into higher education. That wasn't a path. So anyway, I said to my parents, like, something's not right. I didn't know what it was. So they had me tested, and it came back that I'm dyslexic and ADD. Well, that's good in that I knew what was going on, but I didn't know what to do with it. So the only thing I could do is, my father he ran a wholesale distributor company, and he gave me a bunch of business cards, and he said, there's just some people that are salespeople. I always loved people, always loved being around people. So I just started calling these people, and I got a job with Planters Peanuts, got a company car. I thought I had a rock. I mean, it was like everything. It was just all the samples I wanted. I mean, everything. So I start my career, and I just start, it's before email, before any of the technology.
So are you a salesman at this point?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm just traveling, and I'm just loving it, because I got a company car, expense account. I got Planters Peanuts. I'm doing Mr. Peanut Man and Kmart.
Wait, was your company car the big peanut truck?
I know the peanut truck, but they gave me just like a K car, no, it was before a K car. But I thought, because I had a Datsun B210 Shift that I bought, washing dishes, and I finally bought a car, and it was just the basic of basics. But to get a company car with air conditioning and all this stuff in it, I thought I arrived.
Yeah, right.
But I started talking to people, and I love talking to older people. So I'd ask them, and they'd have 20 years, 30 years with the company. And I said, do you like your journey? And I always heard similar stories, like, I'm making so much money, I don't think I could do anything else. And so it was almost like a corporate handcuff is what I thought it would. And so it was always in the back of my mind that I'm not that kind of person. Fast forward 20 years, I've been fired 5 times, I've quit 5 times. I mean, I didn't have like a spectacular smooth work for one company. And I would quit and just go do something. And I had a great job because when I didn't have a college degree, it was always that was the first thing you had to have. So
Mhm.
everybody else was getting promoted and I wasn't. So I just finally said this to my boss. I said, either promote me or lose me. And I was serious. I went out and got my real estate license. I was going to quit. And they did. And they moved me to a military position for Nabisco because Nabisco bought them. And I started, traveling, making really good money, but I had to force their hand or they would just kept me doing whatever I was doing. So I was traveling so much that it was gone Monday through Friday, most of the time
Yeah.
Thursday. And I had Sarah, our oldest, she was 9 months old. And I just didn't really see that as being a path. So I didn't know what to do. I quit. I bought a franchise, personal development, and I just started. No plan, just quit. And because it was good money back then, and I had the best boss. I mean, everything was perfect except traveling.
Mhm.
So, I always had a lot of jobs. I mean, I got fired 5 times. So that, I guess it was just a very up and down and around and learning and growing and getting fired and learning to deal with disappointment was just part of my who I was.
Yeah. Wow. And so were those jobs primarily sales jobs?
Yeah, sales and
Okay.
sales management. I had
Man.
management positions and and I got fired from my last, I think it was a food service position, and I was helping out. I had like 8 people working with me, and I had a friend that was doing marketing, and he was doing it as a vendor from an outside, and I wanted to
Right.
help restaurants grow, and I wanted to really give them because I wasn't a chef like most of them were. So I'm helping him down in Columbus, Georgia,
Yeah.
and I get a call from my boss saying, "You better get back here like now." And I was kind of out of my territory or my district. I go back and I find myself in the middle of a political, you know, squabble
Yeah. Oh,
between 2
man.
regions. And all of a sudden I'm fired. I'm going like, "What?" I'm trying to do the best I can, and you get in the political scene and 2 people trying to fight it out, and I get thrown under the bus, and I'm the guinea pig. So I've been
Man.
unemployed, going to unemployment lines twice, and that's not a pleasant experience because you have plenty of time, but you don't realize it because you can only look for a job so many hours, LinkedIn.
Right. Right.
But I'd always get on the phone, just call people, and I would just make phone calls because if I
You
sent my
still do
resume,
that, Pete.
yes, yes, I do. So that's kind of a little bit of the story.
Okay, the trajectory, right. Well, I can definitely sympathize with having a nine my daughter, my first daughter is almost 8 months old, and so I totally understand that. And let me just say too for the audience, my tongue, I went to the dentist 2 days ago. She accidentally pricked my tongue, and so it's swollen. That's why I'm talking this way. But I want to kind of move into because ever since I've known you for the past maybe half a year or a year, you've been really into creativity, and you talk about how we're meant to create, we're made in God's image, and we should be creating. I want to ask, how did you get into this whole creative space of creating podcasts and writing and all that sort of thing?
Good question. I think it went way back to even when I started, I would do promotions with wine companies because peanuts and wine, and I would put flyers together and I would try to do anything to promote what I was doing. And so I think it started at probably when at my first job, 20. So I was always looking for how do I add value and how creative I mean, I enjoyed it. So I'm not a TV person. I don't do the normal stuff. I wasn't into music per se, going to all these concerts. My brain was active. And at the time it was dyslexia. So I didn't know really what that meant, but I just felt my brain lean towards that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So let me ask, how does your faith play into that? We've talked a little bit about this. I'm
Yeah.
just curious, how have you're one of the only people that I've met, especially at our church, but just in general, who connect creativity with faith. And I'm just curious how you think about that.
Gosh, I'm just going to tell our audience that's another great question. If I didn't know better, you have a great curiosity about digging deeper than the just the typical questions that get asked. Okay. So I think with that, I raised Catholic. So I
Okay.
kind of like always went to church, but I had to go to church when growing up. Not had to, but that's kind of what we did. But then when I got out on my own, I'm going to a church and I'm watching. I always was curious about human behavior. And this church, this Catholic church, right after like communion, the back third of the church emptied. And then
Right.
even at that, there was guys hanging out. It's almost like they just hang out. If they were close to it, I guess they felt better or something. I don't know, but I just had a really weird, like, why wouldn't you want to be there? Not have to be there. So that kind of led me, and I had a golfer friend that invited me to his service, and I had never been to another church at all. So he was just pouring into me and talking to me, and as we're playing golf, and I was curious to just kind of see a different side. And that led I invited to his church. That's when they call it an altar call. That's when I gave up my life, and that was about 25. But
Wow.
at 25, you're living in a town. All my friends are Catholic. Everything I know is Catholic, and I'm kind of like, ooh, I'm not thinking the way that I used to think. And I would go, okay, well, I'm going to be the guy that's going to just bring people to it didn't work. I realized that I needed to change the environment. So, but I did get married to a Southern Baptist person,
Wow.
ex-wife. So I really liked the Bible. I liked the faith. I liked the focus on not just attending, but making that transformation that is, if you're going to have a relationship, I always go back to this. If you're going to have a relationship with a person, you got to spend time with them. You can't like, okay, I want to have a relationship with this person, but I don't need to hang out with them. So it was like, if I'm going to have a relationship with Jesus, I got to lean into the Holy Spirit. I got to find out, spending time with him, what that's like. And so that was a long journey, but here I am, dyslexic, ADD, getting fired, getting all these kinds. So I never had time, I thought, to read scripture. I mean, I would when I was in men's group, and I've been in men's group
Right.
for about 30 years, but I never like first thing in the morning. Now, first thing in the morning, I open up Proverbs and I read. And I'm a part of 2 men's groups now. Men's groups saved my life. I mean, it literally saved my life because I was in 2 bad, dark places. And if it wasn't for guys in a small group, I may not be here. So
Yeah. Wow.
I believe in community. I obviously believe in my faith. I take my faith seriously, and I invest my time into it. Like that's just part of who I am now. But it never was growing up because I never felt I had the time to lean into reading, understanding scripture, and really digging in beyond just being a part of men's group, which when I was a part of men's group, it was, it was kind of a routine. So I didn't take it as a routine, but I took it as a discipline, which was really good for me.
So you do a daily proverb.
Yep. By
Wow. So you follow the month
31
of
days. 31.
the day of the month. Wow.
I've been doing that for probably maybe a year, maybe just less than a year. I figured that if I hang out in Proverbs, that might help me because
it might rub off a little bit.
wisdom, or just, and it was 31 days. So,
Yeah.
31 days in a month for the most part. So I could just always read one chapter first thing in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. And then how does that, so you talked about how your faith was established and the things that helped you, but how does that flow into what you're creating now and the people you're helping?
Ooh, I love it. I think, we all know if we're reading scripture, we all know about about Proverbs.
So,
No,
okay.
about parables.
Yeah, parables. Yeah.
So, parables, stories, I believe everybody's got stories to share. And what I lived at a senior home for almost 2 years, and I saw the end of life more. The average age was over 80. And I saw that, I would always ask people about their story. I was curious. And I just noticed that everybody has a story, many, many stories to tell. And so when I had a stroke almost 4 years ago, my partner, who's my partner now, he said, "Pete, you like golf. Why don't you do golf podcasting?" Well, I used to play golf. I don't play golf anymore. So I did. I jumped in. I didn't even know what the heck I was doing. I was losing podcasts. I wasn't calling on people. It was a mess. But I think if you don't go through the mess, you don't get better. So I did it for a while, but I wasn't feeling it. I always go on feeling. If I'm not aligned, feeling whatever I'm doing, even in sales, if I'm not feeling that what I'm doing is aligned with what I believe about, what I'm doing, I just don't do it. But I just felt that there was something wasn't right because I wasn't playing golf. I thought, well, maybe if I podcast, I'll start getting that feeling again.
Right.
And it didn't happen. But I'm living in a senior home and I'm around seniors and I'm seeing a really cool part of life, that last chapter, maybe, if there's chapters in life. But I started doing senior living podcasting and I really was enjoying it. I did hundreds. Then I moved out and I said, I think that whole market is going through massive changes because everybody is, getting older,
Right.
and there's private equity in that. It just was a mess. So I shifted to local again, just kind of that creativity, listening to people. I try to call 5 people every single day and have a meaningful conversation, because my daughters will probably tell you, if they text me, I just pick the phone up and call them because I would rather talk than text.
Right.
And I think that I think the ability to share stories, everybody has one. Like, I got to know you better on a podcast.
Yeah.
Now, I knew bits and pieces, but when you have 30 minutes with a person and you're the host, people always ask me, what kind of questions are you going to ask me? I said, I don't know. Depends on your answers.
Yeah, right.
Only ask one question that everybody, I'll say, I'll ask you one question: who you are, what you do, and who you serve. After that, it depends on your answers. And I want to get to I want to get to your story, why you think the way you do, what you do, just all the things that a story can bring out a connection. I think stories connect us with people better than most, I think.
Wow. And you're so good. So one of the questions I actually had, I had to write down questions. I don't just have the one, but that's such a good rule of thumb for conversation is if you're not really listening, then you can't really respond to what they're saying. If you have preloaded questions or preloaded thoughts and you're just waiting on someone to finish so you can speak, it's not really a full-on conversation. But this kind of goes into what I was going to ask you is, Pete, you're so kind. When we came to church, you introduced yourself. We met. I see you talking to strangers in the lobby all the time. You're in the greeting team or whatever they call it at the church. And I want to ask, have you always been like that? And then the other question is, how do you approach meeting new people? Because for some people, me and you don't really have this problem, but for some people, they're really nervous to break the ice. They're not really sure how to go about it. How do you approach meeting someone new, and how do you make them feel so warm and welcome the way you do?
Another great question. I can't tell you. Yeah, I've been doing it for, I don't know, 50 years, 60 years. I'll take you back maybe 30, 35 years. And I was in a church that was just starting kind of a startup church. And I love the greeting. I just love greeting and just learning about people, connecting. So I did that. And this gentleman walked through, his name is Al Thompson. And he had a similar story. He growing up Catholic. And I'm sitting there and he's walking in and his wife was like, come on, we're going to go to church, because she's like Southern Baptist and said, hey, we got to hang out in church. Mm-hmm. So he's going and he has all this anxiety, because he's only been to Catholic churches and now he's going to a strange church he's never stepped in. And he gave a testimony about 20 years later. And I was at the men's group that he gave it to. And he said, Pete, you greeted me. Whew. So he said that the way you greeted me I always say, like, all right, this is the time to crack a joke because I got to change so the way you greeted me kind of helped me deal with the anxiety of stepping into a strange place. And, you don't think about that.
You didn't even know that.
Didn't know until 25 years later.
Wow. So you've been so good at this for more than 25 years, Pete. Wow.
Yeah. And I was just at the LA Fitness. And so I'm walking out and there's a lady and she's in a car and it's a wrapped car. So it has branding. So I just, tapped on her windshield and she got out and we just started talking. And I just said, man, I love your wrap. I love what you're doing. I love your branding. I said, and then we started talking about her business. I said, do you have a business card? I love what you're doing. And she gave it to me and she had it. I asked her, I said, do you speak Spanish? And she says, well, I do, but more Portuguese than Spanish. And so I said, so you're from Brazil? And she goes, yes. And I said, I had a person I met 5 years ago and I said the same question. And she says, well, I'm better at Portuguese. And I know the history, but it led to a great conversation. And it just, I don't know anything. I said, look, if you want to promote your business, your story is what's going to resonate, not all this other stuff. And there's so much noise out there. If you'd like to be a guest and we can share your story with our community, here's an invitation. And so I'm just walking out. I always look to talk to people. And right beside me, I leave. I'm talking to her. Another guy pulls up, and I didn't know he was pulling up because we were in conversation. And it was a roofer. And I had seen him last week, and he was getting out of his car, and it's a wrapped car. And I said, I love roofers. And so he goes, oh, really? You do? And then we started talking. And here was what was so cool.
Wow.
He said, I said, I had a roofer on my podcast 6 months ago. I love what you guys do. And I said, what do you do for the company? He says, I manage like 2 or 3 teams or something like that. And so I said, you know what? If you ever want to be a guest on my podcast, I'd love to have you. He goes, oh, you have a podcast? I said, yep. And he says, I would love to. Can I bring Jesus with me? I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, he comes to all my podcasts. And so
Wow.
talking, and all of a sudden in a literally 5 minutes, we're walking as we're talking. He's telling me about his 2 owners. One's a believer, one's a seeker. And the seeker is like seeing all these things happen in his company. And he's going like, he's trying to make sense of it. And he says he can't, because he just can't see what the power of Jesus in business can do for your business if you just kind of let him lead you and you're not trying to do it all yourself. So that was in 2 weeks. That was 2 amazing conversations. And every single day I wear 2 color shoes. And when I had a brace and a cane, and I had to walk around with it. And I noticed people wouldn't talk to me. And I'd talk to everybody. But I noticed I don't know if it was the brace, the cane, the combination, they just avoided me. So all of a sudden I had to switch out when I wasn't using. I had one color on my brace, and then I had another pair of shoes. So I just didn't have to take it off every single time. So after I got rid of after I didn't need my brace, I said, you know what? I had great conversations, because people would always say, hey, do you know you have 2 different color shoes on? And then it would just lead to whatever the moment was. I would just joke around, kid around.
Oh, that's a great conversation starter. Wow.
I kept it to this day. I wear 2 color shoes just to have conversations.
Just to start conversations. You love people that much. That is amazing. That sounds like you, Pete. Just like ending one conversation, starting another one. And I will say, when you see someone in public, maybe with a cane or a brace or something, maybe the assumption is that it looks like they're in pain, and you don't want to stop them from their routine, so you don't, or something like that. But there's probably other reasons. Okay, so let's get to, what are you working on now? What is your big creative push right now? We talked a little bit before about some dictation and writing. What are some of the things and some of the short-term goals that you have for the current moment?
So I've written 2 books, actually a couple, maybe 3 or 4, but I wrote them with somebody with the other ones. So I wrote Reputation Matters and a golf book. Okay. And I think now, more than anything else, because of all the forces that are going on with change, that I call it the 80-20 rule. And I'll say you're in the 20%. Everybody is, just about 95% of the people are in the 20%. But we know that there's 80% potential always in 80-20. But if we focus on the right thing, which is when I meet you and I have an interesting conversation with you, I'm wanting to know more. So I'm going to ask you, do you have a card? And when I take that card, my next step is I'm going to search you online. And I would say you're not in the 20%, because I have searched you, and you have a digital profile. You have content out there more than most. But most people, when I go to search them to find out more about them, because I like what they had to say, that's it. There's nothing out there. Maybe a website, maybe a LinkedIn profile. So there's a formula called 7-11-4 by Daniel Priestley. 7 stands for 7 hours. 11 stands for 11 buying signals or interested signals. Mm-hmm. And 4 is different platforms. So if you want somebody to get to know you, to like you, and trust you, it's got to be online, because it's too easy for me to check out somebody online because I
Right.
got a mobile phone, I got a computer. So when I check you out, if you give me enough information to continue the journey, I'm going to go through a journey with you if you give me the content to know, like, and trust you. And everybody has 150 people that they know, like, and trust because the brain is actually protective of information. If it wasn't, our brain would blow up because there's too
Oh,
much information out there.
absolutely. Oh my
So
gosh.
we're familiar with 150 people that we know, like, and trust. To get into that know, like, and trust takes time. And that's getting to know people, listening to them, seeing, checking them out, subscribing, buying a book. And because we've talked about that, and I listened to your dictation video, and that's the easiest way to write a book because of the system that you have. People think that they got to sit down and write, and there's nothing. Writing is powerful because writing actually wires your brain. That's why I
Mm.
every single day, 2 and 3 times during the day, I'm always writing in my journals. But when it comes to expressing ideas, I think we can speak them. We can speak them into a written form, and then we can do what you talked about is editing.
Editing afterwards.
You have all the systems, like names, complicated names you bring. It's just everything that you said in that video is right on with writing a book. So you asked about projects. So I want to write a book as quickly as I can on our formula.
Okay.
And I have a club called the KPI Club of Impact and Influence. And what that is the more that you can impact the world and the more influence that you have, you'll have greater impact. So you have to give somebody enough information to go on a journey with you. And if you build podcasts, that's what we do. Podcast, courses, and coach. That's all I do. That's the only 3 things I do. So we have our KPI club. I have my silver club. I do live events. Everything supports a person impacting the world and influencing along the way. And, when I always, this goes way back, but I knew if a person called me back within 24 hours, I knew I had good influence with them. If they didn't, I had some work to do because we get all these calls from, I call them the takers. They're always calling when they want something. And I don't call them back right away for obvious reasons. But what I know a person is always giving, I call deposits in relationships. I call them back. I prioritize people when I call them back by basically the kind of heart that they have, the type of person they are, and they're influential to me. So I make it a priority to call them back. So I've got, 26 is going to be, we've been working on this intensely for over 3 years. Now we're really in a position because I have 2 full-timers in the Philippines, and I talk to them 4 days a week, and we strategize. So I don't do the details, which, for me, I didn't have enough hours in the day. Now I got plenty of hours. I do 7 days. Most people have 7 days. I do 21 days in a week. I break my day into 3 days.
Whoa.
5-hour chunks.
Yeah.
And so I know what I'm doing on those 5-hour chunks. So I get so much more done than most because I prioritize. I have written goals. I know what I'm doing every single day. There's nothing that I do for the most part that's not intentional. I self-talk. I have conversations. I just have a system that works very effectively to get the most done from each day.
Wow. So it sounds like you have these projects that are constantly rolling, and maybe that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And in 26, it's going to be the biggest that it's been. But then you have this single project of writing a book that you're looking at. And let me just say too, with AI, there are some prompts you can use with different ones. So for example, if you dictate a whole chapter
Mm-hmm.
and you toss it into AI and you say, hey, don't change any of the wording, but clean it up, add some punctuation, add some paragraph breaks, that gives you a really solid place to start editing than just having to go from the raw text block itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've used that a good bit. And obviously there are rules for nonfiction, like every chapter should probably follow the same structure, examples, key steps at the end and that kind of thing. And I would love to talk to you at some point about what that book would be about. I know you talked about the formula and that kind of thing, but dig a little bit deeper with that. But it seems like we're getting close to time here. So let me just ask you one final question.
Okay.
We've talked about people achieving their potential, creativity. We've talked about how to be open and how you literally wear two different shoes to start conversations. What would you say to someone who feels like they have potential or who feels like they want to connect to people, but they're having a hard time? What advice would you give these people?
Great question. I love that. It's probably your best question. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. And I always say, if you don't start, you never know what's possible. So if you're not, and I see it today because I'm in the Rotary and we try to invite as many of our young people because they're starting their careers. And, we've gotten away from conversations because it's easier to text. When I was dating way back 50 years ago, I had to dial and I'd hang up before the phone would, they'd answer the phone because you're scared that, for whatever reason. But now you can text. Now you can go on social. Now you can do it. It's easy. And easy is not always the best way. You got to start. You got to be uncomfortable. Like that first conversation, if you haven't had a meaningful conversation, going to be awkward because you're just starting. When you first started to ride a bike, were you good? No, you fell off, skinned your knees, banged yourself up, but you didn't say, well, I can't ride that bike. That's not going to work out. You just get back on the bike and keep trying. So I think just start, just have the first awkward conversation and then write about it. Like, what did I learn? What questions would I ask the next time I have that moment where I can have a conversation with somebody?
Wow. And would you say writing about your experiences doesn't just apply to conversations, but almost applies to anything that you experience?
Only time I journaled was when I was at a dark place. And I don't even go back to my old journals. I have probably about 5 of them that I would write because everybody say, hey, you got a journal. You got to do a gratitude journal or something like that. When you're in a bad place, there's no silver bullet. There's nothing easy to get out of. You just got to keep moving forward. But now I have this is my big journal. And then I have smaller journals. And I keep this one with me at all times. So I
have journals too. I got notes and all this kind of little books and stuff.
I mean, I think journaling is the best kept secret out there is because it gives you a chance to kind of release thoughts. And when you're releasing thoughts, the average person has between 12 and 16,000 thoughts that go through their head every day. How do you keep track of that? You can't until you get it out and write it and express yourself because there's magic in the pen to the paper.
And it helps you synthesize what you're learning onto the page. And then when you see it objectively, even now or later, you can kind of come back and say, oh, that's what I did learn. And I will say something interesting. I saw a video recently on the brain science. You talked about it healing your brain. Mm-hmm. It connects your motor cortex functions to your frontal cortex, to your amygdala, where you experience emotion. It connects all these wires that typing doesn't, which I don't know why typing doesn't, but there's just something about writing that apparently strengthens the mind. So I'm actually hoping in the new year, I know some people aren't about New Year's resolutions, but for me, it helps me to have like a streak or a date. So I'm hoping to start a routine of daily journaling or daily writing of some kind. Mm-hmm. And I like I said, I do now, but not as consistently as I would like. So maybe you'll inspire me, Pete. This is great. Well, thank you for coming to the Pete Kane podcast show today. So glad to have you.
Yes. Let me so you inspired me right now to do this. All right. Hold on if I can find it. I want to give as a gift to anybody that listens to that. Journaling, as you know, is so powerful. I'm going to put up on there that QR code, and let me see, where can it'll take one more second. I'm going to find it, and I want because I give a free course. So if they go to pkane.me/journaling and use the word podcast, it'll waive the $97, and that you can scan it or go to that website, because journaling will set you free in a creative path that it'll be the best thing you could do for the new year is get into journaling and do it intentionally.
Yeah, every day. Every day. Well, Pete, thank you for the interview. I appreciate you coming on to your own show. This was a great conversation. I wish we could go on longer, and I wish my tongue wasn't swollen. But yeah, I always love talking to you, Pete.
Hey, look, when the tongue gets healed, let's do it again.
Let's do it again. Hey,
I can't imagine what Joel will be like without a swollen tongue.
Maybe we could talk about writing. That would be great.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for flipping the script. We appreciate you very much.
Hey, you too, Pete.